watch out for perfection. It's better that, better done and moving forward than perfection. Like perfection is a bit of a perfection is actually an obstacle. So yes, it needs to work well, but waiting for perfect is not going to really work. So knowing how to pivot along the path, like understanding a pivot will help you get to where you need to be, but the goal is not perfection. Because perfection is really hard to achieve it. You will constantly be in try mode rather than execute mode, right?
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups and 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we are always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Luann Horobin. And Lauren is close I'm going to get to pronouncing it. Started their journey in high school and college, wanting to go into healthcare. Studied healthcare administration and anatomy and physiology, and then graduated and started working in a middle class management role and organizational and HR focus. Business got restructured. Decided she wanted to work in a different industry, so left to healthcare and went into recruiting. Afterwards, moved over into consulting and did that for about 20 years, and then shifted again and decided to go into professional coaching and working with the subconscious mind and helping people be more efficient and about how they feel and think about things. So, with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast.
Well, thank you, Devin. It's really nice to be here. It's fun to
Absolutely
share this with
excited
you.
excited to have you on. So I just gave a quick introduction to a much longer journey, but why don't we rewind and unpack just a little bit, and tell us a little bit about how your journey got started, or in high school and college, wanting to go into healthcare.
Okay, so yes, and you did a great job of snapshotting, a pretty comprehensive journey. So thanks for that. Um, in call, really always loved healthcare. Like in our family, we had a family friend that was a doctor, and it was just one of those things you always grow up and you think, oh, I love healthcare. So I started my journey and went off and got some training, and I was working in middle management and administration. And I really loved my work, but here's where, sometimes our whole pattern of life, we don't even really realize what we're doing. We're kind of going on autopilot. So I love my work, and this restructure comes along, and I get an
So
unexpected.
just rewinding just a little bit, just because we jumped into a lot of it. You had the love of healthcare. Now walk us through, because I think you started out, or you went in and actually studied some healthcare administration, anatomy, and physiology. But
Yes.
before we jump to the working world, walk us through a little bit as to the background of the education, how you kind of started out there.
Okay, how I started out there was I'd always admired healthcare because we had a family friend that was a doctor, and it was a real exposure to a lot of the medical background, and I just loved it. It was just something, it's just like whenever he was around and talking about work and all the things he did, I just thought, oh, I just have to do that. So I was really intrigued and headed off in that direction. And and I guess then and I was really fortunate. I got a really good, suitable job actually. And so I loved my work. I had some people development, I had some organizational development, and it was like really that career happy place. And when I got my package, I was completely not expecting it. And it forced me kind of to really think kind of quickly. I was a single mom, and I just really needed to relaunch pretty quickly. And it made me think, what do I really want to do? Because I can't be sort of pondering this for long. And I recognize, as much as I loved healthcare, I wasn't attached to just totally putting all my work in healthcare. I wanted to also work in different industries because I was recognizing this kind of a broader focus of my purpose, which led me to the change into recruiting and into outplacement and then into coaching, which was
So
Uh,
that was about a 40-year period that you are condensed in about 2 minutes or two
well,
second sentences. So let's unwind that a bit. So you were in the industry, you got working in the in middle management, kind of organizational HR. You mentioned that that got restructured, and you decided to go in a different direction. Now walk us through, because you were in the healthcare and you'd wanted to be in that for a while. How did you
I
kind of
know.
decide where you're going to go from there?
Well, how I decided where I was going to go for that was I recognized how much I loved my work, and I loved the purpose of my work. And part of the purpose was healthcare, but I could also see that that purpose was broader than healthcare. Like from working in the actual environment, I could see that that purpose was broader in other industries as well. And 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 I don't know, it's just something I just saw. So I had to figure out how could I do that type of work in more sectors, because I wasn't familiar with it. This was actually pretty early in my career. And so a
Hmm.
lot of change happened actually over a pretty short period of time. And into the move into recruiting, which was a couple of years, and then I moved into outplacement. And from there, when I moved into outplacement, because it wasn't a full-time role, it was about 3/4 of the time, I was exposed to coaching, and that's where I began to build my coaching practice.
So now,
And
just when you shifted into recruiting, because I mean that's a good good shift between healthcare to the recruiting industry. How did you make that transition, or because you started to touch on it, but how did you figure out
oh,
how
how
to
did I
shift
figure it
gears
out?
from doing health?
You
Sorry,
know,
go ahead.
it's kind of an interesting thing. I honestly didn't know how to figure it out, because and I didn't know that, but I also was pretty inspired because I was a single parent, and I just didn't have time to spend a lot of time figuring out. So I thought, how do I get the exposure to other industries to kind of see if I want to go back into healthcare, if I really do want to launch into more industries,
Hmm.
because I felt that I did. But sometimes, it's so true that we can have an image of a job, and then when we're in it, it's not exactly what we think it is. It's a different experience.
So
And
now, while you're doing that, so how when you shifted into recruiting, how long did you stay in that industry, or kind of how long did you kind of take that time to figure it out?
I was there 2 years. I was there 2 years. And so in that sense, I had a sense of what that particular aspect was. And it led me to think I still want to work in more industries. I like the diverse industry aspect, but I
Hmm.
also really was moving into sort of, I would call it just a broader sense of purpose in my work. I wanted to work more with helping people, really be able to fulfill what they wanted to do. I had that approach in healthcare, but I also had a lot of organizational structure in healthcare. When I got into recruiting and I was recognizing really this is more my purpose, it's helping people understand what it is that they can do and how possible it is for them to do it. Because I was in an environment where, when things change like that, sometimes we don't really understand how we're going to get to where we want to be.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
that was my way of getting there. Was kind of experimenting, really, to be honest, and seeing how could I get an experience that could give me an idea if I was really on track. And so that's how I did it, was recruiting. And then I moved into outplacement because I thought recruiting wasn't quite right, but outplacement seemed more like it was right. I've kind of had a dual career, kind of had, uh, then I worked with outplacement, but I continued to expand my coaching practice. And that was really became my main focus.
Gotcha. So you kind
Yes.
of shifted, went from recruiting, started your coaching practice. Now, as you're getting into coaching, there's a wide variety of different areas you can or coach on. Anything from health and
Oh,
fitness to personal,
100%.
to mental health to to taking a career, to shifting in a career, to building a business, to a lot of different areas. So kind of how did you hone in or figure out kind of which area you wanted to drill down on as far as with the coaching?
Right. Because I think the common theme that I was experiencing from right through from healthcare through to the recruiting through to the outplacement was really helping people get where they wanted to be, like have their own meaningful work, have their own meaningful purpose, be able to connect to that, and to try to shorten the gap of that change, that in between time. I felt really inspired to help people really get what they want. I was in so many environments where people were I was just noticing how um so many times people weren't really where they wanted to be, but they also often felt there's some reason that I can't get there. And I thought, if there's something I could do in the world, that's what I wanted to do, was help people get where they want to be.
Gotcha. So
And so
now
I kept
you
navigating I kept navigating that path towards that.
So now, as you navigate that path towards that, having the desire to, both help people as well as kind of focus in on coaching. There's, at least from my third party distance perspective, there's a lot of different coaches out there, and it feels like it sometimes is a bit of a crowded field. So how did you go
That's
about
right.
actually taking that idea from, hey, we're going to do coaching, to actually kind of building a practice around it, or otherwise finding people that were, looking for that type of coaching? Kind of walk us through how you went about in the early days of getting coaching set up, how you got the business set up.
Okay, well, that's a good point, because in the process, I was recognizing some of my early patterns of life. So this is where, I was recognizing I was raised on the farm. So I was like a high achiever. And that was kind of the way I went, was kind of like on automatic pilot. So it was not a quick learner on getting out of the automatic pilot sort of high achiever rut. And I kept wondering, like, I'm working really hard. It doesn't seem like I have to need to do this. And I started questioning, why was I having so many of the sort of struggles that I had? And why was this so hard? Like, there was basically a hard work scenario. And it led me to actually starting to study mindset, and how does that actually work? Like, how do we get into this perspective? And we just like dive in, which was what I was doing. And there was a whole new world that opened up for me. Once I recognized kind of what I was doing, I could see a lot of that possibility around me. And it was so intriguing. I just recognized that's really more of my own strength. My strength, I was pretty clear on where I wasn't skilled in terms of coaching. There are other kinds of coaches that do a great job in other areas of business, but this particular part was like my sweet spot. But I also have an insatiable appetite for it as well. So it's intriguing to learn, and it was just really intriguing to watch and share it with others and see how they could apply it as well, right?
Hmm. No, that makes perfect sense and sounds like a good place to focus. So how did you go about, as you're doing that, kind of finding your clients or people that are wanting to, to improve in that area? In other words, kind of how did you go about or building the business around that, going out,
Right.
engaging clientele, and building out people that are needing coaching in that area?
Um, so I think actually I was a little bit lucky, because I heard a lot of things about, oh, this is going to be so hard. You can't really do this, by the time, how are you going to get your clients? But I think because people were aware of the changes that I had been in, and as they watched me evolve through it, a lot of times people would say, Luann, how did you do that? And I also then began joining more of the sort of the coaching circles, the networking circles, getting more exposed to that particular aspect of the business. Like, where are the people hanging out that I am interested in talking to, type of thing.
Hmm.
So a lot of it was, I would say, like my own circle, networking, referrals, that type of thing. And then it was just kind of exploring. I just looked at it seriously. I just look at it as an experiment. Set up an experiment for yourself, and then go for it. And you will get the feedback of what you need, what works, and you'll get the feedback of what you need to change as well, right?
Yep, absolutely. So now that's been an evolution. Because I think, as we chatted a bit before the podcast, you've been in this now for 15, 20 years. Is that right?
Well, We only count the first 20.
Well,
More than
I
20.
counted as long as you've been in business and helping clients, however long that's been, I would definitely count it.
It's over 20. It's probably closer to probably 30-ish.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're coming up
Yeah.
on 30 years. So walk us through, has there been an evolution, growth, expansion, shrinking of the business, or kind of how has that maybe changed or evolved over the last 30 years as you've continued to coach and help people?
Yeah, that's a really good question because things always evolve. As focus that I had earlier, um, the focus that I worked with when what clients were experiencing earlier, it seems like it continues to evolve all the time. And and so where I'm working now, I'm working more with more senior executives, people who are experiencing, I know what I need to do. It's not that I'm totally stuck up, but I am stuck in some way, and then I'm not able to carry through as much as I want or to the degree that I want. So
Hmm.
it's a bit more it's a bit more complexity. It's like people are exploring more of the unfamiliar territory, more of the uncertainty. But they have a definite idea. It's just getting there, right?
No,
Does that
that
make
makes sense.
sense?
No, yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Now, just your kind of maybe a follow up. What was the motivation? So if you're kind of focusing on the higher level people or up within the business, kind of was it that was just naturally the people that are gravitating towards needing that coaching or realizing that the benefit of it, or kind of what pushed the business to evolve in that direction?
Okay. So initially, I think I didn't really answer your question earlier. Initially, I think I worked with people who they were sort of in an earlier stage of evolution. And they recognize, like, we have a goal, we have these steps and that type of thing. And yes, they're looking for help getting there. But where the people that tend to be coming to me more now is because I do have a bit of a range, is they've been through that and now they're growing into more of the uncertainty. Like, I know I want to grow. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to grow. And I also kind of have an idea of how to get there, but I just can't really get there. It's
Hmm.
like, I know there's more to life than this, but how do I get there?
Hmm. No, that makes perfect sense. So,
Yeah.
so now you've been doing now kind of to follow up. You've been doing this now, as you said, for around 30 years, and you at least count the first 20. But
Just
as things have continued to evolve, or where do you kind of see if you're to look out in the next, 6 to 12 months, kind of where do you see things continue heading? Is it more of the same and continuing to just help people and look for people to to coach? Is it expanding the business in different areas, bringing new team members on, looking towards exiting the business, or anything in between? Kind of walk us through what does that kind of or the next 6 to 12 months look like for you?
Well, I don't see myself exiting the business. Like, I don't know. That's just not really on my horizon. But what I do see is I'm always evolving the processes that I'm working with, and I'm evolving them to I involve them so that people have a clearer track to actually having a new experience when they're finished working in this process. Like, they have a new experience, they see the world differently. Like, they
Hmm.
literally say, my world has changed. I see the world differently, and in however that looks for them. Often it's basically a kind of like, it's like raising the battery up to the 9-volt battery in whatever you're doing in your life, right?
Hmm. No, that makes
Yes.
sense. So awesome. Well, it sounds like it's going to be an ongoing continued evolution of the business. Sounds like a lot of fun yet to have, and definitely it'll be fun to watch and see how things evolve. So kind of with that, now as we've reached the present day of the business and even seeing a little bit as to where things are headed, always like to or transition towards the end of the podcast by asking a couple of questions at the end. So we're going to jump to those now.
Sure.
So the first question I like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
I think the worst business decision I ever made was like sticking with something like way too long. There's a period of time where there was let's say, a marketing program that I was using, and I was really struggling with it, but I was determined like to stick it out, stick it out, stick it out, stick it out. And really sometimes and I thought there's several things that were probably wrong with what I was questioning what I was doing. Am I doing this correctly? Am I doing that correctly? Ultimately, it really wasn't the right fit for what I was doing. You know,
Hmm.
it wasn't, it just wasn't the right fit for what I was doing. And I think it's a fit for another style of business, I think. But it just wasn't the best fit for me. And I think I should have, in hindsight, I stuck with it too long. And I've done that. I've done that a couple times. I've had to catch myself. Okay, Luann, when you see this is not working, you give it a time frame. If it's not working any better, then you exit or pivot. I'm going to call it pivot.
No, and I think that is always a hard balance because as you're doing a business, sometimes you're saying, "Hey, I just need to stick with it a bit longer. I just need to,
I
keep at
know.
it, and eventually you'll get the success." And sometimes that's right, and yet other times you're saying, "Hey, all you're doing is, metaphorically beating the dead horse." Or in other words, you're continuing to put resources and time and effort to a thing that really doesn't make sense, or you could be or finding more success in other areas if you'd continue to evolve and to shift. So it's always an easy area to make a mistake, but always a great one to learn from. Second question now that I like to ask is, so now if you're talking to someone that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Okay, I think it relates to the last one, but slightly a little bit different. And that would be to watch out for perfection. It's better that, better done and moving forward than perfection. Like perfection is a bit of a perfection is actually an obstacle. So yes, it needs to work well, but waiting for perfect is not going to really work. So knowing how to pivot along the path, like understanding a pivot will help you get to where you need to be, but the goal is not perfection. This perfection is really hard to achieve it. You will constantly be in try mode rather than execute mode, right?
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely true. And it's one where I think that a lot of times as you go into it, you're wanting to have that perfection, or you're wanting to have everything just right, and you're saying, "Hey, this is my one shot," or maybe this is the only time I'm going to be able to, or make an impression on new customers. And while there's some truth to it, first impressions do matter. On the other hand, if you're always trying to reach that level of perfection to the point where it's holding you back, or you're never able to actually do
That's
the
right.
things you need to with the business, then it can be detrimental. So I definitely think that's a great piece of advice and a great takeaway. Well, now as we are wrapping towards the end of the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
The best way to reach me is LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and I'm pretty easy to find. There's not very many people that have their name spelled the same as me. So I'll come right up. And yeah, I'm there quite a bit. So that's the best way to reach me. And I'd love to hear from them.
Well, I definitely encourage everybody to reach out, to support a great business, expand their network, and if nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast and/or our newly launched Inventive Fireside webinar series, we'd love to have you on either and/or both. To sign up or to apply, just go to inventiveunicorn.com. Also, if along your journey you ever need help with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we are always here to help. Well, thank you again for coming on the podcast and sharing your journey, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Well, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.